I thought I'd do something different and talk about a book instead of music or movies. So, I have a hard time reading most of the time because it's just easier to watch stuff. But it's so good for your brain, and I feel like you just feel so much more like inspired and happier and excited to live life when you're reading instead of just consuming watchable content all of the time. But truth be told, I did listen to this book that I'm about to tell you about, so take that with a grain of salt. I don't know. I think listening to books is probably better than listening to podcasts. But anyways, I like to listen to books because you can do it while you're working out, which by working out, I mean walking. So anyways, the book that I'm talking about is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. And probably most people that I read this book after 2020, I read it because I love Evermore by Taylor Swift. And I thought it would be really interesting to see like if I could pick up on any lyrical parallels between like her songs and like deep cuts in the book. Because it's a long book. Like I think it's, I don't know how many I think it was like 20, maybe like 20 plus chapters, and I think it was like 17 hours on Audible, and I think it took me like 2 weeks or a week and a half to finish it, because sometimes I'll abandon a book within the first 5 chapters if it's just not clicking with me, but I didn't do that with Rebecca because I thought it was really, really good. So anyways, for Evermore, I think it inspired songs like Ivy for sure. They talk about the house in the book being covered with ivy a lot, and I think that was where that inspiration came from. Cowboy Like Me, Tolerate It is the one that she specifically said was inspired by Rebecca, which I think is crazy. I don't really think their dynamic is like the one described in Tolerate It at all, because Tolerate It is all about she's basically cooks and cleans and does all this stuff for this man to like try and please him, but that's not really what the girl in Rebecca is like at all. I'll get into that later, but I think it's kind of crazy that she use their relationship in that way, because it's really not their dynamic at all. A girl who we never find out her name, and I think that's a really interesting choice as an author to not give the main character and the person that is telling this whole entire story to you a name, because it really allows the reader to like inject themselves into the story and kind of be like, oh, I'm seeing this through my own eyes, you know, like, because there isn't like a tangible name or like person or backstory to hold on to for this character, so it's kind of like you're the main character in the book almost. Yeah, I thought that was interesting because I've never read a book where you don't know the name of the main character, the one who's telling you the story, so I thought that was really interesting. Anyways, so she meets a man named Maxim de Winter, which I think de Winter is an excellent last name for it's like kind of gothic English countryside. I think it's gothic, not gothic horror, gothic fiction. It's basically like a ghost story genre set in a creepy house where there's like something haunting everybody, which is, I think that's a great idea for a genre, and the story definitely fits into that. Okay, so the girl, unnamed narrator girl, meets Maxim de Winter, and he's the owner of a huge English countryside estate called Manderley, and that's where most of the story takes place, but they actually meet in France. I think Monte Carlo is where they meet, and so the girl is working as like a companion housekeeper for, her name's Mrs. Van Hopper, who's like a wealthy American lady, and basically she and Maxim like fall in love fairly quickly, and they elope and get married, and then she's gonna like go back to Manderley immediately after they get married. And I listened to this book while I was going on walks in the woods, and it's set in like the English countryside, and there's a lot of like vivid description of nature, so I would highly recommend doing that too. I think it was like $15 on Audible, so it's like I think it's really worth it if you want to get a brain sharp again for school or something. But anyways, so the girl and Maxim get married, and now they're going back to the English countryside to his estate called Manderley. And actually the book, I didn't realize this while I was reading it, but she sets it up as all this is like a flashback, and her and Maxim are together trying to forget like the events of the book, and I did not realize that, and I think it's nice to not know that while you're reading the book, so try to forget that I said that. Not a flashback in a film reel, one screen in my town. Anyways, okay, so it's all a flashback, but the narrator, when she gets to Manderley, she immediately feels like inadequate and fearful of this like new scale of her life, because kind of a lot more prim and proper than she was used to, and she's expected to entertain people and kind of be like the her wife. Yeah, so she has to do all of that. And so she's particularly unnerved when she meets the entire staff, because they're all just like standing out there waiting for her to greet her, like my nightmare. And there's this one staff member that's particularly unfriendly to her, who's Mrs. Danvers. So she's kind of like the old wench, I would say, like that's the role that she fulfills. And she is really, really loyal to Rebecca, and she loved Rebecca, and she's like particularly devastated that Rebecca's gone, because they were like best friends. Like Mrs. Danvers was probably more loyal to Rebecca than she was to Maxim ever. And she's always reminding the girl that she's nothing like Rebecca, and she could probably never fill Rebecca's shoes. So Rebecca is kind of like a giant ghost shadow looming over any possibility of this girl being able to like fulfill her shoes, or just even create her own path at Manderley, because everyone loved Rebecca and is kind of just wanting like Rebecca 2.0, and this girl is just not that. She's a completely different person. So the narrator, she's put into the less desirable side of Manderley. Like she doesn't get to be in the nice room that Rebecca and Maxim used to have together. She's like shoved into this like other corner where like she can't see the ocean, and it has like a terrible view. So I guess that's kind of like a metaphor for her just like being out of place in general. Yeah, so she settles into Manderley more and more. She starts going on walks, and there's this this huge valley like at the bottom of the house, I think, called the Happy Valley, and it like splits into an ocean. And actually, like, you know this from pretty early on in the story, but Rebecca died in a boating accident, because she was very independent, and she used to go like boating by herself at night, and she drowned, or at least that's what everyone is saying about her. But so when she's going on these walks with Maxim, and he's like kind of teaching her the history of Manderley and his life, he has a dog named Jasper, and the dog like runs away, and the girl like frantically runs after it and is like hunting around to try and find like a makeshift leash for the dog, and she stumbles upon this boathouse that used to be Rebecca's, and the boathouse is like fully furnished. Like it looks like Rebecca was living in there, and the girl thinks that's really weird. She's like, I thought this was like this perfect marriage, so why does she have this like kind of semi-secret boathouse that looks like that she was living in it, and nobody told me about it? So she doesn't really get any answers on that, and Maxim's like, that's when they have their first fight. He's like, why did you run after the dog? Like the dog would have come back. He's like very stereotypical like shut off man. Like he doesn't really communicate his emotions, and he kind of just expects a lot from her. This is not like a feminist tale in any sense of, though, I mean it kind of is, but not really, because she kind of does just capitulate to this like man's like wants, needs, and desires. But she also has a lot of like interiority, and because we get the story through her lens, like it kind of seems like a feminist story, but it really is kind of all just centered around her feelings for this man. But yeah, I think she's way more interesting. Maxim is like maybe the most boring character in the book, and Rebecca also, she's like a character, but you never actually get to meet her, but like you only see her through memories and stuff. So Rebecca died in a tragic boating accident, and so she was like the belle of the ball. Mrs. Danvers loved her. Her memory looms and haunts Manderley, terrorizes the narrator, because she's like, I can never like live up to this girl. And so, but the big plot twist in the story, this is the big spoiler, is that it comes after this big trick that Mrs. Danvers plays on the girl to kind of get her kicked out of Manderley. So she suggests that they're gonna have this big gala to like celebrate their marriage, like that they got married, and all of the friends of the estate are gonna come, and they're gonna have like, they're just gonna have a ball, they're gonna have a gala, like Great Gatsby style. And Mrs. Danvers suggests to the narrator that she should wear this like white silk gown that is based off a painting that's in the gallery like downstairs of Manderley. And the girl thinks this is a great idea. She thinks that like this is the beginning of like her and Mrs. Danvers bonding and having a relationship outside of the expectations that Rebecca left behind. So she gets this gown, she gets this whole getup, she gets her best friend, well, also like her maid, Clarice, because they kind of bond, because the girl kind of was in a role similar to Clarice's before she married married Maxim, so they really relate to each other on that level. And so they help each other, and she gets this outfit together based off the portrait, and she like has this moment where she's like walking down the spiral staircase into the gala, and you know that horrified look from everyone in the room, like it was very much that looking up at her, because and she was like, why are they all looking at me like that? And so it turns out that Rebecca had worn that exact same outfit the night that, or like at the very last ball before she died. So everyone's like, oh my gosh, this girl is like insane because she's trying to copy Rebecca and kind of posit herself as the new Rebecca, which was not the narrator's intentions at all. I would have been fine with that if that was the case, but it wasn't. She's like a very nervous, doesn't want to ruffle any feathers kind of a character. So anyways, Maxim is like embarrassed because he's like a curmudgeon, and so she's like horrified that she's embarrassed everybody, and she's like seemingly mocked Rebecca and her legacy by wearing the same getup that she did. And so she like runs into her room and changes and like slams the door and kind of hides for a little bit until she's like convinced and like coaxed out of the room, and she changes, and then she like goes about the rest of the evening as normal. But then the next morning, like Maxim didn't come back, and she was like, oh my god, the marriage is like over, donezo, but I have to go back to working to Mrs. Van Hopper. Don't want to do that. I like living in this giant palace. But that's actually not the case, because what had happened the night before was a ship. Remember that Happy Valley, and it like breaks into a beach, and that's where Rebecca died. I shouldn't say died in air quotes. I don't know why I did that. So it breaks into a beach, and what happened the night after this whole catastrophe with the dress was a ship had crashed into the shore because of heavy fog, I think. This is actually based off something that actually happened near where Daphne du Maurier lived in Ireland, I think. I think she's from Ireland, like the countryside. And a ship had crashed into the shore, like near her house. So that's what she based this off of. And so Maxim was just out like all night dealing with the Coast Guard. But he seems like on edge because they're like fishing around in places and things. And so it turns out somehow they get back together, like the girl and the narrator girl and Maxim like come back together, and they like go into the boathouse where Rebecca had like furnished it, and she finds out that Rebecca in fact did not die, but Maxim killed her because he like shot her because because she had admitted that she was like pregnant with another man's child or something, and so she was donezo kaput. It turns out that wasn't really the case. Rebecca wanted him to kill her because she was actually deathly ill, and she was kind of like a snaky person, and she had lots of affairs with lots of different people, and like embarrassed Maxim, and they had kind of an arrangement that she would present as like the perfect wife when really like doing a lot of seedy things behind the scenes. Well, I don't know, seedy, because Maxim was like the worst guy ever. But anyways, so Rebecca tricked Maxim into killing her, and the narrator girl finds out about this in the boathouse the night after the whole embarrassing dress thing. And so this like kind of brings the narrator girl and Maxim closer together, and they're like, we're gonna fight the authorities together. And they do, and they're tested a lot, especially by one of the guys that Rebecca was having an affair with. He really like doesn't believe that and the reason they have to the reason why Maxim and the girl are growing closer together is because they find the boat that Rebecca supposedly drowned in, and they found out like the vents or something were stopped up so that the boat would sink, and they were like, why would Rebecca do that? So like they think it might be like self-harm or something like that. That's the police's theory. And then Maxim gets questioned, and they go through this whole trial, and the guy that Rebecca had an affair with was like accusing Maxim fairly because he did it. But anyways, in the end, Maxim gets his name cleared, and Rebecca I guess she gets what she wants, because what happens in the end is that Mrs. Danvers burns Manderley to the ground after Maxim and the girl are like on their way back from the trial that they just went through, that Maxim got his name cleared at. So basically Rebecca won because Manderley burned to the ground. And the way that Daphne du Maurier described like the house burning down was some of the most beautiful writing I've ever seen. Okay, I just want to read a quote from Daphne du Maurier wrote about, so they're on their way back from the trial that Maxim just went through, and Manderley is burning to the ground. But you would have to be kind of paying close attention. So, okay, so here are some of my favorite quotes from Rebecca. The rain smelled of moss and earth and the black of the dirt. It's quite simple, but I love the way that she describes nature. I think that's one of her strongest skills as a writer, is really setting the scene and putting you in it. No crisis can break through the crust of habit, because I thought that was so true. Because she was talking about like some big event had happened in the book, but they still got up and ate breakfast and cleaned everything and like, did all the dishes and stuff. I thought that was like, that's so true. Like, you know, like the world, for some people, for these privileged people that have like staff and stuff, no crisis can break through the crust of habit. And I just thought that was like an interesting perspective. Like, yeah, like you still have to take care of yourself even when like scary things happen. Some people like don't have that privilege, but I liked that line a lot. No crisis can break through the crust of habit. I don't really know if I like this one that much, but I wrote it down. I shall remember that face of his till my dying day. It's kind of dramatic, but I think it was a face of Maxim, either when he was like being cleared for his crime that he did commit, or something eventful with him. So overall, my thoughts on the book, I really love the way that it described nature and the scene setting and the vivid imagery of it. I thought the protagonist, whose name we never learn, which I think is so interesting, that she decided to make her nameless. I think maybe that's one of the most interesting things about the book, is that you don't know the character's name, because they kept like waiting for it to be revealed and it never was. Because it really, really allows you to like inject yourself into the story. I thought that was good. I love that Evermore inspiration aspect of it. I really don't think Tolerate It is the song that was inspired by Rebecca. I think Ivy was, but Ivy is kind of a complicated mess if you're like into the Taylor lore with that song. So I don't think she really wanted to talk about Ivy. In the one interview that she did for Evermore with Zane Lowe, which is one of my favorite interviews that she's ever done, by the way. So check that out. Read Rebecca if you're in like the Summerween kind of a mood like I am all of the time. There's something about Summerween. It's just like that craving for fall that I feel like comes in late July. There's something about it. It's August now, but I could care less about August. I actually hate the month of August, so it's really funny that that Taylor Swift song is like such a big thing, because I feel like was written by a person who hasn't gone to school in a very long time. Because August is just dread for me. It's like, oh my god, it's like school's about to start and like things are gonna get real again. Because fall is a return to self, as Sooty Green would say, from the Lost Culturistas podcast. Fall is a return to self, return to your real responsibilities. And August is kind of that person who wrote that does not have any real responsibilities that they're stressed about. Anyways, I'm sorry that I'm going on a rant about August, but it's not like a wistful month for me. It's like anticipating dread. That's what August really feels like to me, because you're going back to school. There is like a week before school, or the maybe like the syllabus week, that kind of feels like that, because it's exciting. It's like, oh, I'm excited because I'm in school again and nothing's hard yet. But right now I'm in like state of perpetual dread. Anyways, back to Rebecca. I think I'd give it like a 7 out of 10. It's definitely the book that I've definitely read start to finish this summer that I've enjoyed the most. I also read The Year of Magical Thinking. I read that a few months ago. I'm lying about that. But I read that, and I thought The Year of Magical Thinking, it hasn't hit me like it's hit other people, because I think I read it like a little too early for the subject matter of it, by Joan Didion, The Year of Magical Thinking. I'm sure it's a lot more enlightening when you've gone through something like that. But I should definitely get into reading more Joan Didion, some of her other stuff, her other works, like Play It As It Lays. I think that might be my next read. What else did I read this summer? I read the Britney Spears biography, which I thought was really good, insightful. I've really been getting into like early Britney. In the Zone, unpopular opinion, but I think that's her best album. It feels the most real Britney to me. Like, it feels like she had the most creative input into that. And that album cover distinctly reminds me of 1989 by Taylor Swift. There's just something like ethereal and magic about that, like blue mystery and the look that I just love that album cover so much. I might add it to my wall. What else? Okay, back to Rebecca again. I keep getting sidetracked. I think my favorite character is probably the protagonist, because there's not that many, followed by Rebecca by herself, because she's Rebecca herself. Sorry, not by herself. Rebecca, because she's interesting. There's a lot of twists and turns to her. And then I guess Mrs. Danvers, because she's kind of the villain of the story, I guess. But she's really, she's kind of on the right side of history, because Rebecca is way more interesting than Maxim, and I feel like she had every right to do the things that she did to him. So yeah, Mrs. Danvers, although, like, she was so evil to the narrator, that I'm like, why couldn't you have, like, ganged up with her, and you could have both taken Maxim down, taken Manderley for yourselves, had a feast with Frank. Oh, I didn't even mention Frank Crawley. I like him. He's like a housekeeper guy that is kind of friends with the narrator. So yeah, overall, I think I'd give the book like a 7 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. I might reread it in the fall, actually. It was so good. Definitely read it on nature walks. Would be my highest suggestion to you, because it's just so atmospheric and it'll really get you in the mood to do that kind of thing. So if you have woods by your house or anything, I would listen to that. AirPods in, walking. It was very good. 7 out of 10. Goodbye.